So you may have heard that I have replaced my iPhone 13 Pro Max because I did my final review of it in the last video. So yeah, the 13 Pro Max is now officially gone. And now you're probably wondering, okay, what phone did I get to replace it with? Well, you'd be surprised, but here is the phone that I got to replace it. I'm kidding, of course, no. I'm not switching to an iPhone 8 with a home button and Touch ID that I can't use. I'm obviously joking. Here's the actual phone that I got to replace it. Introducing for the first time on this channel, this is my iPhone 16 Pro Max. And yes, I also bought this phone in August, right before the 17 line came out. Truth be told, I've been using this phone for about a month, and this is because I've been having so many, just way too many issues with my iPhone XS Max and my 13 Pro Max combined. Not because of the hardware of the devices, it's actually primarily due to the software, funny enough. Yes, iOS 18 has been sucking so much, it has been driving me so mad. There have been plenty of times where I have debated actually going back to the Pixel. Yeah, remember that Pixel 6 that I used for a month? You know, this thing? Yeah, I nearly switched back to this phone for the time being because iOS 18, man, it is just trash. And so finally, August 6th was the day that my contract with the 13 Pro Max ended. And immediately after that, we all went to the AT&T store and I bought this, the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Because of course, I'm me. I have to do Pro Max. And you're probably thinking, dude, you're literally a month away from the 17 lineup. Why not just use the Pixel until then, or just put up with your buggy iPhones until then? Well, you can ask Apple about that because for whatever reason, they seem to just not give a shit about their phones anymore. I'm dead serious. They really do not seem to care about their phones anymore. Be it that they've been stuck on this ugly design for years, and they've already done enough crap to this phone that I'm still scratching my head over, this button here in particular being one of them. And as a result, I'm frustrated. And there is legit nothing in the leaks and rumors that suggest I should actually consider getting the 17 lineup. There is nothing that is convincing me I should get that. And so, here we are. I got the 16 Pro Max in August again. And so this phone is actually kind of meant to replace two phones because truth be told, I really have been carrying two phones with me on the daily. Yes, while the SIM card was in my XS Max, there was a work app that I could not remember account details for, therefore could not remember to get them back on the XS Max. And as a result, I ended up just carrying two phones, the XS Max, the one with my SIM card, and the 13 Pro Max, the one with my work app that I need. Well, okay, the 13 Pro Max also functioned as my primary camera for this YouTube channel, which it's now gone. Any guesses as to which phone is filming this video? And so, yeah, I primarily got this phone because I knew that the XS Max was done for. It's not getting iOS 26. They've officially dropped it from support. And I don't know about you, but I ain't sick with iOS 18. It's a pile of you-know-what. And at the same time, I've never really cared that much for the 13 Pro Max. And also, that phone ended up having a problem towards the end of my ownership. The charge port ended up kind of failing. It still technically worked. The problem is I only had a 10% success rate every single time I plugged it in. My guess is a metal shaving got into the charge port and fried it. That's my legit only guess, but yeah, the charge port really doesn't work and that's a bit of a problem. And also, I kind of really wanted to have USB-C. That's why I ended up just trading that in. Also, that had the better trade-in value compared to the XS Max, so I traded the 13 Pro Max in, the phone that I never really cared about. So that way I can still keep my favorite phone in the entire universe, the iPhone XS Max. It is still my favorite. It legitimately is. So I still have that phone, but at the same time, I can't really use it anymore thanks to Apple dropping software support. And so I'm now using this, the 16 Pro Max. Enough blabbering about history and why I got this. Let's actually talk about my impressions with the phone itself. So starting things off, it's bigger than the XS Max. That is the first obvious thing that I noticed, and bigger not just from the XS Max, but also the 13 Pro Max. Definitely the biggest phone I've ever owned. And you know what? I am not complaining, because if there's one thing that you know about me, it's when it comes to screen real real estate, you go big or you go home. That's just how we do things around here. And this 6.9-inch display really takes the cake here. 120 hertz, which the 13 Pro Max had that, but my XS Max didn't have. So, yeah, appreciating having 120 hertz on my daily driver again. Again, it's not a deal breaker if it doesn't have it, but I still appreciate it because I do notice it. The other thing about the display that immediately jumped at me is the bezels. These are some insanely thin bezels. Like, how did they get them this thin? This is kind of crazy. I mean, okay, phones like my Pixel 6 Pro here, they had the edge panels where the display kind of goes a little past the edge and such, but I mean, it's still very much appreciated when you get the bezels as thin as possible, and it only goes to help just give this a big display feeling. I mean, this is already a big phone, but now it really especially feels like a big phone thanks to the thin bezels and the big display. So yeah, big appreciation on that factor. The one thing that I'm not too sure exactly how I feel, and it's mostly not positive, the dynamic island. I've been playing around with it for a bit. It's kind of cute. It's kind of nifty how it'll play certain animations, and instead of having all these animations take up either the middle of your display, or it would typically just be a white bubble with say like the AirPods animation. You know, that animation on iPads these days, since you can't really buy an iPhone without dynamic island except for the 16E these days. Kind of nifty, but at the end of the day, I really don't care for it, and as I use the phone more and more, honestly, I still wish it was a notch. Yes, I'm dead serious. And this complaint primarily comes from just the fact that I can tell that this thing could move further out of the way from my content. It makes itself pretty obvious, especially when you watch content. The notch didn't make itself as obvious because, while sure, there are those of you out here who might view it as an intrusion either way, at least with the notch, you can view it also as an extension, thinking, yeah, the display could just end where the bottom of the notch is, but no, they decided to stretch it past and extend it past. And that was always how I viewed the notch. That's why I never really ever had any complaints with it. But for the dynamic island, well, it literally is an intrusion. There's no extension because the black pill here, this is in the middle of the display. It's not sticking past, it's not kind of stretching. No, it is in the middle of the display. I find that a bit distracting. I don't really like that. And to my surprise, even though I never typically complain about camera protrusions in displays, because again, I have so many notched phones, I never even complained about the camera cutout for this thing. Let me pull up a white screen for a quick sec. Here, so I got this. See, this camera hole isn't exactly huge, and even though I'd still prefer it to be a notch, I don't know, it's just not that distracting because it's so tucked out of the way. But even this, the camera protrusion on my 16 Pro Max here, it is so large and it is closer to the middle of your content. And I've especially found it annoying watching videos. I'm not the biggest fan of dynamic island still. But other than the fact that I now finally have an always on display again, I legit have always wanted this on an iPhone. Even though the 14 series brought that with the 14 Pro line, well, they kind of botched that initially, and thankfully they changed it so that way the wallpaper is just not darkened, because at that point, you really could not tell. Was the phone actually on or off? You really legit could not tell. But now that we have a proper always on display here, I really do appreciate this. This makes checking the time very convenient if for whatever reason I'm not wearing my watch or my watch is dead, which has happened on the occasion if I'm an idiot and forget to charge it. And also it does kind of help with orienting the phone, making sure that the orientation is correct, considering that now it's a bit more difficult to tell thanks to, all right, let's talk about the sides of the phone. The button layout on this is really driving me insane. Let's start off first with the action button, because that's actually a slightly older feature on iPhones that it is now my first time actually getting to experience. This came out with the iPhone 15 series, and I was not a fan of it. I was legit actually preferring the ringer switch, and especially now, because now there are times where I will attempt to raise the volume of my device only to hit the action button multiple times, only for it to do, well, not what I want it to do. So, okay, I keep hitting the action button, alright, so I'll slide my finger over only to accidentally miss the volume up button and start hitting the volume down button, and I'm still not raising the volume of my device. Really annoying. Okay, I get that people want like a hotkey or something for pros, enthusiasts, and that type of stuff, but it's like, okay, if you want a hotkey, if you want a quick toggle function, how about, I don't know, just this is just a suggestion. 1 minute. So yeah, not a fan of the action button. The fact that there's a third button on the side of the phone now, it's not convenient. I really miss the ringer switch, because what do I actually have the action button programmed to? It's still the ringer. I'm not even joking. I do use the ringer toggle a lot, and that's why I preferred the switch. With the switch, you instantly knew just by looking or feeling for it whether your phone was on silent or whether it was not on silent. But with this, nope, you always have to push the button to check, and also now you can't figure out exactly what button you're on when you try to raise and lower the volume of your device. It's not convenient. It really isn't. And speaking of not so convenient buttons, now we get to the extra button that Apple decided to add for this year's iPhone. What's the deal? They're adding all these buttons that's like, did we forget the reason why we moved away from the BlackBerry concept? Apparently they did. Oh my goodness. Yeah, now it's time to talk about camera control. And this button here, I did find it a bit convenient when I went on vacation last month. I went to DC for a week to visit Tabby Cat 406, which, yeah, I did kind of like the button for a quick camera launch thing, but ultimately I found out a whole bunch of negatives that just outweighed the convenience of being able to quickly launch the camera while the phone's in a sleep state or in an app. So first up, it's right exactly where the meat of my thumb sits. So every time I try to grip the device harder, oh, we launched the camera. How convenient. Yes, that is exactly where the meat of my thumb here grips. I am randomly finding myself accidentally launching this camera app. And it's made even worse by the case that I use, actually. It's a little more difficult with the phone just not cased up, but the case that I selected, the ESR case, that honestly, I really do like the case. The problem is just, it makes the button way more easier to press. Yeah, I am constantly accidentally launching the camera when I don't want to. They've now made it way too easy to launch, and it's now becoming an annoyance. And okay, accidental launches aside, what about the rest of the functionality of the button? Because they add like a slider function or something like that. Never really found it useful. I'm still finding myself just using the on-screen controls. And am I using the button to take pictures and videos? No, because with the amount of force that's required to do it, you actually end up accidentally shaking the phone, ruining your photos and shaking up your videos. And to top that all off, if you were to use it properly, this is where my finger would typically rest if I were holding the phone right, except the problem is the button is all the way far over here. I'm awkwardly stretching and trying to reach it. So why bother? This button was so poorly implemented. It's like, why? It's like we didn't even need it in the first place. You want a way to quickly launch the camera? Again, why not program more functions in the volume buttons? Like push the volume up and down at the same time and boom. That could quick launch the camera or something like that. I don't know, but why are we putting more buttons on the sides of the phone? It's just making it harder to grip, and now you're accidentally launching things you don't mean to launch and doing things you don't mean to do and unsuccessfully changing the volume of your device. It's just, why? Honestly, I think the button layout on this makes more sense because at least there's not a ridiculous number of buttons. There's just 3: power, volume up, and volume down. And even though I personally liked the ringer switch, as that was a power tool I kind of used a lot, even that's not completely necessary. Maybe you could have that function as the, oh, you push the volume up and down at the same time, that can mute or silence your device. And it's like Pixel does have a camera quick launch function. It's double tap the side button. And while double tap the side button on the iPhone means Apple Pay, I don't know, you could triple tap the side button to quick launch. There are so many ways they could have done this with fewer buttons. There's just now too many buttons on this phone, and it's getting difficult to actually hold this thing without accidentally launching something you don't want to. Really not a fan of the buttons, but I am a fan of USB-C. I used it a bunch, especially considering that CarPlay in my car is not wireless, so I do need to use the Type-C port. And yeah, I do like the Type-C port a lot. And at some point, I might use it for microphones or storage when I need to record longer videos. Who knows what? But I do know I like that USB-C port a lot, and it is so good to finally have it on my smartphone again. And in terms of the video cameras, my opinion, they're pretty spectacular. Watch my iPhone 13 Pro Max review. I filmed it with this. Yeah, I like the cameras a lot. And actually, well, when I bought my ESR case, it also came with a couple of camera guards, so it's nice that I'll have extra protection just in case. But ultimately, that's really all I can say for the hardware. Well, okay, I forgot to mention battery life. Battery life is also insane. Like, I can get 2 days out of this, and this is charging it to 80%, by the way. Battery life, spectacular. Software experience, it's still iOS 18. Though, interestingly, I haven't really experienced any bugs on this yet. That's a bit interesting how I'm not experiencing any bugs on this, and this is running the latest version of iOS 18, by the way. Both my 13 Pro Max and my XS Max, they are nearly completely unusable, and that's unfortunate. I'm disappointed in that regards that those phones can't run a stable version of iOS 18, and yet this has been my most stable experience on an iPhone with iOS 18. I am a bit nervous for what iOS 26 is going to do to this, because as far as I can tell, Apple clearly doesn't understand the problem with iOS right now. It's not that, oh, the design is lackluster and people are bored. No, it's the fact that it doesn't work. That's what I care about. And so far it's been working on this, but as this gets software updates down the road, I don't know. As far as I can tell, Apple really doesn't care anymore. They are so focused on making sure their shareholders are happy, they are completely forgetting about who's more important. Me, the customer. I guess we'll have yet to see how this phone ages for the next 3 years, as once again I'm on another AT&T contract to make sure that I save money with this, because by the end of this contract I would have paid $500 for this phone again. Yep, this is the reason why I still stick with AT&T. When they're selling me phones for $500, it's like, how do you not? And so yeah, that concludes my impressions with the 16 Pro Max. This will be my daily driver for quite a long while, and this will also be the phone that records the majority of my YouTube videos from this point on. I'm very much gonna miss the XS Max. At least I'm filming this video with it, so that's special. But yeah, I'm gonna miss the XS Max as my daily driver, but at this point, thanks to Apple completely screwing up software, it's damn near unusable, which really hurts my soul. All right, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. Also, do me a favor and check out my Patreon page. I would very much appreciate that. This is the Random Alpha Gadgets, signing out.